Okay, here you are. AI and product operations with Dan. Really excited to have you here. Um, this is a bit about Agile Austin, which is a larger community. Most folks are at least somewhat familiar with it, but check us out on agileaustin.org. We've got a couple of sponsors that folks have seen for many years here. Speaking many years, Agile Velocity, um, 10 years maybe, Admiral Area Coaching. You can sponsor if you'd like. You can be a member. And one of those membership benefits is Slack in the member portal. We're actually doing an experiment where anybody that wants to can join the Slack community. So please feel free to reach out to me or Vishal if you'd like an invite. Doesn't cost anything. We just want to continue building our Slack community. There's about 20 people in it today, but the whole Agile Austin Slack community is hundreds. These are all the SIGs that we have. I won't go through all of them, but we got a lot. And there's 7,000 members in our meetup group. So feel free you'll get all the invites to all the meetups that we do, all the SIGs and the in-person meetings as well. Got a number of other sponsors that are sponsoring at various levels. Thank you to all of them. That's about Vishal and I and our SIG. So we've rewritten the product and AI SIG mission about 20 times, I think. But the idea is that we're coming where product, AI, and Agile come together. It could be product, it could be AI, it could be Agile, but it's going to be at least product and Agile every single time. We can add AI. We'll probably always have it, but we renamed it from the AI and product SIG to the product and AI SIG. So we see a lot of similarities between Agile, what happened with Agile in software development, 10, 20 years ago, and what's happening with AI and how that connects to product. And that's the skew, the bent that we want to have in this community. Darren Peterson will be talking with us next month. Starting small with AI can benefit customer and product team. And John Hines will be talking about something really interesting about this intersection between usability and AI and how psychology matters. It's a pretty fascinating topic. So both of them will be really interesting. All right. So here's Dan. He's going to talk about artificial intelligence and how it's revolutionizing the field of product management, particularly from an operations perspective, how you make better decisions, how you personalize customer experiences. And he's going to go and talk about practical stuff, case studies, and all the work that he's done in his role at Pragmatic Marketing. And with that, I think I'm going to hand it over. Actually, I'll do my intro. I should do an intro to you, Dan. I think a lot of people know Dan, proven product management leader. I think he might have led my Pragmatic Marketing product management. I'm an engineering leader kind of person, but I really have benefited from the Pragmatic Marketing framework that I believe Dan taught me maybe 10 years ago. Extensive experience as a product manager, instructor, mentor, coach, wide variety of interactions in different industries. So he's now teaching courses, building community, AI product operations design. There's probably not one area of product that Dan hasn't seen. So we're super fortunate to have Dan, and I will stop my sharing and give it over to you.
All right. Thank you for the intro. Let me see if I share. Looks like
Yep.
We're good to go.
Yeah, we are.
Okay. Yep. So thanks for the intro. Yeah, I've been very involved. Lots of things product. I'm a part-time Zoom bomber. I like to do that on the side. I was kind of testing some of my latest and greatest here with the group and fast. I'm so glad that that we're locking it down. But in all seriousness, it's such a problem. But kudos to the group to kind of make sure that this is a good learning environment. Hopefully we'll avoid that. But let me see. Oops, I'm totally on the wrong slide. Let's just dive right in. All right, so here's what we're going to talk about today. I put slides together, but it's really going to be a little bit of a loose conversation because I see this convergence happening. You see this big boost in productivity and all of these revolutionary things that are coming, that are here, but also there's potential in the future. But I also want to talk about this concept of product operations, because I think there's some just not necessarily confusion on the AI side, but just people are uncertain. What does this mean? How is it going to help me? How might it hurt me? And then there's just a lot of confusion about what is product operations and how might my company benefit from that. So I want to kind of look at both and then show you like how you can think strategically about both them and hopefully, use some of the tips and some of this discussion, because I do want it to be a discussion to kind of improve product at your company. So we're going to be talking about just AI and product managers, what AI is, how are people are using it, what is the impact on product. Then we're going to kind of dive into product operations. From there, I'm going to touch on just a few data, I'm going to talk about the data a little bit and like the data aspect of it, because that's a lot of what product operations does, but also kind of just call out a few tools. I could do like a 6-hour presentation just talking about different tools. But I'm going to name some that I like, but I already know there's some people here are using different tools. I mentioned Carrie was on, did a great job in the panel last night. It'd be great to get hers and others' opinion of like what she thinks are helpful tools. And then we'll just wrap up with some questions. But let's dive into the first section. So we're at this, it's really an amazing time to be a product manager because these generative AI tools are allowing us new capabilities and new avenues for creativity within our jobs. And they really are going to help us innovate. And I think they can help create a stronger connection with our market and with our buyers. It's also going to help you be more productive. So Goldman Sachs did a study where they said we're going to have, they are predicting around a 30% productivity boost for a lot of the positions that are using AI. And I think product is definitely one. One of the things that came up at the mega meetup last night, and that again, Carrie was on the panel for, was documentation. It's a pain, writing user stories. There's things that take up so much time of product managers, take up so much product managers' time that we might be able to improve, to automate. Maybe we're not going to completely automate it, but we're going to cut down on the time needed for those small, tactical, even firefighting things, and then be able to reallocate that time to more impactful strategic work that product managers do, or at least are responsible for, but not always have the time. Now, there's some downsides. AI is going to eliminate some jobs. Maybe it's going to make the need for as many product managers won't be necessary. I think for those people who are kind of out in the job market now, they're already seeing, companies are starting to say like, well, maybe we can get by with fewer. But means some jobs might go away. And I like this one stat, 60% of roles didn't even exist, back in the 1940. Like my mom's first job, she was in a typist pool, kind of like, in New York City, just like out of Mad Men. And then my dad, he set up bowling pins. Those jobs are gone, but new opportunities came for them, and they will for us as well. So for product managers, the impact that you're going to be seeing, this is just another survey that was done. 92% thinks AI is going to have a very long-lasting, significant impact on product managers, product management, and being a first mover. There's a lot of people feel that's an advantage, but a lot of people are a little bit cautious and they're holding off for the variety of reasons you see there. And I think I like the fact that the lack of clear use cases is number one, because that's where I've seen a lot of product teams get into trouble, because they're like, oh, we got to take advantage of this AI, but they're not really, it's a tool in your toolbox. You don't start with AI. You still need to start with what problem are we trying to solve and why? And then think, might AI be able to help us with that? And there's a lot of other reasons why people are a little bit cautious. Obviously, data and security is another concern. But it should allow us to realize value. We're going to see personal productivity, in individuals and teams when we're using AI. And is it going to allow us to add value or reduce costs? Ideally, it would be both. And so I just put up some simple examples here, like, we can, with product descriptions, we can easily do translations, and we can make those translations and descriptions even better. We can reduce costs because, we're able to do things faster. And you can see it's not just product who is going to benefit from this. Sales development, marketing, customer support, all of these groups throughout your companies can benefit and see value added using AI. And that's kind of like one of the big themes I want to touch on is you want to take an AI operations approach, not just and I mean, when I say AI operations, you want to see how can AI impact our entire company positively. Because what you don't want is one group using AI and seeing great productivity benefits, but then others being laggards. Because if you think about how work flows, sometimes when you see a boost in productivity and a boost in volume and things, one area, it actually can create a bottleneck in others. And companies need to be strategic. And they need to have like an AI council to say, like, all right, how are we going to use this? What are the right use cases? Where are the potential risks in using AI in different areas of the business? And you don't want just pockets operating individually. You want to have that larger strategic AI operations discussion. Just out of curiosity, just by like show of emojis or hands, how many people here have like an AI council or something like that at their company, kind of tackling the AI operations? So Diana, anyone else? Carrie, Yahya? Okay. So Matt says somewhat. Okay. So yeah, Christine, I think it needs to be more formal. Some people say kind of sort of, it's loose. I think that this is really something where maybe I'm not saying you need to go out and found this, but if you want to be shown as a thought leader, you could propose it and build it. Start to put one together. All right. So one of the things to remember is that the AI we're using today is going to be the least capable AI that you'll ever use. These tools are only going to get better. So what you want to do is start to familiarize yourself with them, see how they might be able to add value and where they're lacking, because these tools are lacking a lot right now. They're not like, like a magic wand or pixie dust that's going to make everything better, but they're opening up new possibilities and new potentials. So we want to make sure that when these new potentials start to become a reality, you're there to capture the moment. But there's challenges in kind of implementing all of this into the product process. And you can see from the impact of AI and product management survey by Air Focus, all of the different issues that are going to go in there. So, we need to be thoughtful about this. We need to make sure that, we're not putting out information that AI generated for us that's incorrect. We need to make sure that people understand the benefits and the risks. We need to make sure that we're doing it in a way that adheres to what legal and compliance and security and other groups, are concerned about. So one of the things, that I teach in my AI class is that AI will answer your questions, but it's very important that you as a product person question the answers. It's not enough just to have excellent prompt sense. You still need to have excellent product sense. So AI can be a big boost to product managers in many different ways. And we'll start talking about that a little bit. But you can't just rely on the AI. I'm sure we all have heard horror stories where people have kind of used AI, used it inappropriately, or didn't, really vet what was given to them by an LLM, and then things went wrong. So this is just a very helpful quote to remember. You need to keep a human in the loop to make sure you don't end up, embarrassing yourself and your company. That's where your personal product sense is going to come in. And again, this is why it's still important. AI is not going to replace you as a product manager, but you need to be able to leverage AI really well and combine it with your own product experience. So one of the things I talked a little bit earlier about this idea that if you see a productivity boost in one area, you might be creating a bottleneck downstream. And if you think about the product development lifecycle, you go from discovery to validation all the way through to build, market, and launch. And you want to make sure you have that really nice even flow. And if you are using AI in one area and being able to do your discovery and validation faster and your ideation faster, but then you might create a backlog when it comes to build and design. So again, this is why I think you want to look at it from a holistic perspective to say, all right, we could use AI in all these different areas, but how can we make sure that we're using it in a way that really is a force multiplier for the entire company, not just one or two people or one or two teams? Because again, if everyone's using it in their own way, you're not, I think there's, from an executive's perspective, there's issues there. All right, so that's kind of like product managers, product management and AI. Let's talk about product operations. Okay, the first thing we need to do is like talk about what is product operations. So product operations, very simply, it's just the discipline of helping product managers scale up, product management to scale up. And it just helps individual product teams make sure that they're aligning to the strategy, to make sure that they're using the right data, to really optimizing how they're having, like they're working. What you don't want is, again, is each team just kind of, operating how they want. You need an overall product model. What is our product philosophy? What is our product process? What are the expectations as I go from discovery to validation, as I'm doing positioning, as I'm building out my prototypes? If every team is kind of making that up on their own, it's going to get very, very chaotic very quickly. Again, just by show of emojis, who here works at a company that has product operations within it? Susanna and Diana, okay. Spencer as well. Okay, so Rachel as well. So I think that this is something, because if I go through and I talk about all the pain points of different companies when it comes to like, hey, what happens when you scale? I think probably the area where we see this most is in planning, quarterly planning. I went to one company and I overtook 7 different teams. I was running all the back end teams. And then I was collaborating with all of these other kind of groups. So we had, I don't know, like maybe like, 30 different teams. Every different team was doing their quarterly business planning and presentations differently. And it was, from an executive standpoint, like the chief product officer, like it was not a helpful process. It was basically a series of one-act plays instead of one comprehensive play where you could tell the overall story, what the product was, what was happening for the product org. AI, or excuse me, product operations is really meant to kind of bring some process. Now, not a lot of process, just enough guidance for each team. So again, so they can eliminate some of that things that are consuming product managers' time so they can focus back on what's most important. All right, I know I've been talking a lot. We're going to ask lots of questions, but if anyone has questions along the way and wants to pop it into the chat, that's probably the best. I have it on my screen here below. So let's talk about what product does, product operation does, how it can help. So again, it's meant to remove obstacles. It's meant to remove roadblocks so that you're always making data-informed decisions. And it's also helping cross-functionally. I was just had lunch with a fellow Pragmatic product manager, or excuse me, product instructor. And we were talking about how product operations can improve market launches, marketing campaigns, and product launches, because there's always conflict between market and the product teams, and product operations can make sure like, hey, when you're going to do a product campaign or a marketing campaign or a launch, here's the inputs that marketing needs. Don't just tell them, hey, we need to do a webinar to promote this. No, let's step back and say strategically, what are we trying to accomplish and why, and what is the data that marketing and the launch team needs in order to achieve those desired outcomes. But the bottom bullet is really the main point. Product operations is meant to be a force multiplier. It's not meant to be like, oh, we'll have a product manager and then a corresponding product operations manager. And then the product operations manager will go and talk to all of the different stakeholders. No, you're just creating a game of telephone. You should have product operations and then different teams, and they should be setting up these self-service, tools and data so that product teams can operate better. That's what I mean when I say product operations should be a force multiplier. So specifically, how do they help? Well, they streamline data to kind of make sure that you understand, are you kind of helping? If you work at a company that have OKRs, I always wanted my teams to be able to clearly see, by doing this work, you guys are helping this overall goals that we have, whether it's retention, whether it's renewals, whether it's, more revenue, whatever it may be. There's also a tools and data aspect to this. So oftentimes product operations will set up those product analytics platforms. they'll kind of standardize operations. So it makes it easy. So, all right, here's how, you know, you need to prepare your quarterly business plans, or here's how you do capacity planning. Here's the expected agile data, or like, you know, you need to make sure you're capturing your bugs, your feature work, your spikes and tech debt. Plot that out. You know, what is graph, you know, how are we doing in terms of velocity? How are we doing with our success metrics? Things like that. So there's lots of different ways that product operations can help. And there's three kind of main buckets that I want to highlight. And again, we could spend lots of different times, but again, just to give you an understanding of what product operations could do. The first bucket is product standards. Basically, what are those best practices that teams need to be following? And it's really a focus on efficiency. So it's, you know, what are the common frameworks that we use? How do we put together a business case? Are we doing maybe a product opportunity canvas that we can go and then we can drill in and talk about market sizing or competitive landscape, or, you know, the different segments that we're targeting with by addressing this problem? There's obviously things with roadmaps, all of these different things like, hey, this is how we do product here. So that when you onboard as a new product manager, you're not trying to have to figure it out. It's all there for you to self-serve. So that's the first bucket. The second one is market insights. This is making sure that you have a really solid understanding from a data perspective about your customers and how they're using your products and what problems exist in the market. So at Pragmatic, we refer to this as operating outside in. It's very easy to start on the inside of a company with just a few data points, be like, you know what, who wouldn't want that? Oh, you know what, someone just asked for this, we should build that feature. And then you charge forward and realize, oh, this, you know, this isn't really what the larger market wants. So these market insights is critical. And there's so much information out there, but it's hard. And you don't want each and every individual team trying to go and find and locate and manage all of that data. You want a central location for this. You want a one size fits, well, a single source for this. And this also helps with your cross-functional information, because again, if you can have that data in a way that's easy to share and easy to self-serve, it kind of alleviates a lot of the chaos. Finally, the third bucket is business insights. All right, how are we hitting those business goals? So, you know, we've identified these problems. We use this data from the market to decide and prioritize. We're building these things. We've set these success metrics. Are we hitting them or not? Are we seeing an increase of sales? Are we seeing, you know, adoption be what we think it is? So we want to make sure we're solving problems for our customers, but also driving the business forward. Oftentimes, this takes shape using transparent dashboards and things like that. So I would always, all my teams, I would expect, I should be able to see a dashboard with our OKRs. And if anyone just looks at our dashboard, they should be able to read it and instantly know how well are we doing against our goals. All right, we're in the final section before we get to
Hey Dan, can I talk?
into the questions answered. I just want to say, Vishal asks, how is product operations different from portfolio management? Yeah. I'm trying to think about like how to say that. So I think portfolio management, there are definitely some overlaps, but you know, I think with product operations, you're not necessarily making any product decisions. But with portfolio management, you might have to do some coordination and make some calls that you wouldn't expect from product operations. They're just there to pave the path and make it smooth for you to, you know, make the right decisions. But I think, you know, I haven't really done a lot of portfolio management, so I can't really speak to it, but I'll open it up to the group. Does anyone kind of have a good way that they would describe the difference between product operations and portfolio management? Or Vishal, do you have a mindset that you want to share?
I mean, I want to see if anyone has thoughts on that, but I can definitely talk about portfolio side. Because typically what think of portfolio is going to be, hey, what's the overall strategy? How does your roadmap and how do your product and how do your priorities tie back to that strategy? Then you kind of look at the resourcing for that and the ROI and all that kind of stuff, and you track all those KPIs. to say, how are we doing against our overall portfolio, which then ties into the strategy.
Yeah.
That's how
Yeah.
I think about portfolio.
Yeah. So I think it's clear that there's definitely some overlap. And again, this is why I try not to be too prescriptive. I'm putting together a product operations workshop for Pragmatic, and I know that companies operate in different ways, and they have different structures and different product lines and things like that. So we don't say like, this is how you have to set up product operations. We actually, in the course, we give you the principles, and then you actually build a plan for either how to improve product operations if you have it already, or how might you set it up and how might you roll it out at your company. I do want to shout out something that Susan mentioned, because she mentioned there's a really good book on product operations by Melissa Perry and Denise. I don't know if it's Tillis or Tills, but yeah, it's a great book. Highly recommend. If you read that book, you'll get a really good sense of what product is and how you might be able to use it. But I mean, I would recommend just coming to my workshop when it launches, but that's just me. But it is a great book. I have to give it a shout out as well. It's fantastic. So let's talk about and Matt, we're going to talk about a lot of the tools, because again, we can go on and on. But the first and foremost, you're probably familiar with generative AI, things like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, all of those. And then there's special GPTs. Now, I called out the Chat PRD AI for product managers. This is one that was actually mentioned in the AI panel discussion last night. So what they are is just specialized versions. So if you have specific tasks, you can go and use these very specific GPTs to get, to be able to, they're going to ask you the right input. You're going to get exactly what you want. Well, maybe not exactly, but it understands that particular problem space, that's very specific problem space. So I really like that one. If you're not playing around with the Chat GPT, or the GPTs within Chat GPT, I highly recommend it. By the way, and actually, let's put Carrie on the spot. So is Carrie still here? I'm looking for names. Oh, there she is. Hi. I'm gonna ask you to unmute. So tell us a little bit about the GPT that you've been working on. I can ask to unmute, but I can't. Oh, there you are.
Did this work? Am I here?
It did work. Yeah.
Oh no. Are you talking about the one that when we were doing the panel prep, I was telling a little bit? Yeah, so I've been playing around with a custom GPT that helps with like building out an accomplishment journal. So that's the idea of you're keeping track of how are things going at work, what are the things that you're achieving, so that if you are interviewing or working on resume, you have like a journal of here are all my topics just ready to go, because it's hard to come up with them on the spot. So what I'd really like to be able to do is just sort of word vomit and then have it translated into, okay, here's the structure of, here's the story to tell, here's the situation or the task, like that STAR format.
Yeah.
And doing it in like a product manager specific context. So I've asked it to ask me questions that will help me identify, well, what were the outcomes, what were the metrics, what are like those points that are going to be really important to pull out into stories. And it just kind of helps with clarifying my own thinking.
Yeah. So the way that Carrie described that is how we should be thinking about using AI. It's not like, what can AI solve for me? It's what problems do I have? What would be great if I could kind of automate? And this is a real problem, because I do a lot of mentoring and coaching, and I work with a lot of people, and I encourage them to have an accomplishments journal, and it's hard to maintain. But, with this, you may be able to tap into your emails and you think about the data sources, and it may be to automate this, down the line. You could probably put it together using Zapier and stuff like that. But honestly, building GPTs is not difficult. It's something that you should probably just, try at the very least. Now, other tools that I think are really interesting is, so Copilot is one, and I'm sure some of you are probably using this already. But what I really like about Copilot is it's going to take all of your company information, that specific information. So it's not just going to give you the generic answers that are just from, ChatGPT, but what it's going to do, it's going to pull from all of your emails, your spreadsheets, your Word documents, your presentations, team meetings, whatever data is, in there, you can then use it to make more informed decisions. Like, hey, we're putting together this product launch, or we're releasing the new version of the platform. Look over all of our past retrospectives and what are some of the main learning lessons that we should remember as we go to release this new version of the platform. This is where it can help with like brain drain. Like, you ever have that where like, oh my gosh, so and so, yeah, I can't believe, Carrie's leaving. She knows everything about XYZ. Well, if you've been capturing this, and it's easier than ever, especially with meetings like this, you can use Fathom and Otter. You can capture data and then be able to talk to it later. So I love this idea of being able to leverage company information and do it in a way that where the data doesn't go back into the larger LLM corpus. So think also about every level of the product tech stack. And this is actually this is from the supplemental documents in the book that Susan mentioned. So there's product managers, just the way that engineers have a engineering tech stack, we have all of these different tools that we're using. Everything from product engagement to road mapping to innovation and idea management, adoption, in-app surveys. All of these tools are going to have AI built into them. So you need to really go and test those out, figure out how you can automate things so that you can become more productive and you can show other people how to be productive. And again, going back to the larger AI operations discussion, every group, sales should be able to be understanding all of the the new tools that are AI tools that are going to be in Salesforce. They should be able to say, hey, look at all of our historical data and then analyze our current pipeline. And based upon past performance, do in like a regression to determine what might our end of the year sales look like. So everyone should be, and then we're going to see, I'm sure I'm not using Jira right now, but I'm sure there's already things baked in there. I know there's things in like Notion and Dovetail and all of those. I was going to do a quick demo on Miro, but I think hopefully you've tried it. This is one where you can automatically do sentiment analysis, and then we can create a presentation on the slide just by taking all of the notes. Just doing you do quick affinity mapping for you, and then start generating insights and outputs. It's pretty cool. One of the other things I want to mention, and again, this is not an endorsement, but this is kind of like I like this example because it speaks to the promise of AI. One of the big challenges that comes up in my class is making sure that you're doing market-driven prioritization. But in order to do market-driven prioritization, you have to have a pretty thorough tracking system of all the market evidence that there's a problem out there that you should solve. And if you think about that, you get things from customer support. There's things that come up on support calls. There's things that you find out from surveys. You go out and you do interviews. Maybe you look at in-app reviews. Maybe you look at what's going on in social media. You probably got other information in, spreadsheets and Word documents. What tools like Craftful do is they will allow you to easily integrate that into one location through Craftful, where then AI will go and analyze all of the information collectively to generate and bubble up insights. So it's basically like you're talking to all of your customers and you're talking to your full customer history all at once. So if you're recording sales calls, they can pull out information from there. And so what it does is it filters through. And as the bottom you can see here, it's like, what we're seeing is 71% or 71 users want this. This is going to help you as a product person because you're going to get a salesperson that's going to be like, hey, Roxy, everyone's asking for this. And you can go and say like, hey, we're not seeing the market evidence. Like, maybe you say every customer is asking for this, but can you just connect us with a dozen? We'll go and do the discovery. And they're like, well, it's not everybody, but it is this one person that I really want to sign the contract. So this is a way for you to be more transparent about how you're doing your prioritization, because you want to say, what is the market evidence? What is the market evidence that this is the problem we should solve? And then you also need to bring in the other variable, like, well, how impactful is this going to be? Based upon, and that impact rating, that scale should mirror your strategy. Those combined is going to give you a market-driven prioritization. Now, you still need to go and factor in other things like time and effort and, you know, resource availability. But I love this idea that what Craftful is promising, because it's going to simplify something that's been very difficult for companies. Think about everyone at your company that's talking to customers and partners and getting feedback. You have sales, design, you know, engineers probably hear stuff, you customer support, implementation, your executives, but it's all scattered around. Well, if you have one place where you can bring it together and then speak to it from a product perspective, there's obviously a lot of value in that. All right, so Matt asks, are there new IT platforms to define, import, and structure data from various sources in order to pull the appropriate or meaningful information? Is it like creating an AI database from internal resources? Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. They just make it very easy. Let's say you're using, you know, hey, we've got Zendesk as our support. We do Salesforce for our sales. We've got Qualtrics, you know, for our surveys. We have a bunch of information in Dovetail that we've done with when we're doing our user research. We have a bunch of information in spreadsheets and a bunch of information in Jira. Well, you can kind of pull that all together and then have the AI go through and look at all the information. Then you can start talking to the information. So, yeah. So the difference between a query is that you're actually having to actually look at structured data. And with this, you're not having to use SQL. You're not having to use, like, was it Jira QL or whatever. And it's really, you can almost like just have a normal conversation. Again, think about it as this. It's got all of this information about all your customers, and it's speaking on behalf of them. So it's just, you do that through prompts. Now, you have to, again, in our AI workshop at Pragmatic, we really teach all the different prompt techniques and reflection prompts and how, you know, you can get the best, you know, specific information. So you're still going to you'll get that information back if you're querying the data in an effective way, but you still need to go and validate on your own, you know, because I wouldn't, you know, it's great to have this information. These tools are getting there, but they're not there yet. Again, Craftful, it's helpful, but the potential has not been reached yet, if that makes sense. All right, let me keep going here because I want to make sure we have more time for questions. All right, questions that you have, who, like, you know, it'd be great to get people off mute. I feel like I'm yelling into the void right now. So if you have a question, just raise your hand. We'll take you off mute. Yes, Rachel.
I'm unmuting. I'm giving her the permission to unmute.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking, and maybe that was the question that was being asked in the comments also. For something like Craftful, is it like, can you take things that are scattered, possibly text-based, not in a database shape, and instead of saying, tell me like what the conclusions are here, to say, give me a report, then I'll draw my own conclusions. Because I feel like I don't necessarily want to use AI to give me conclusions, but like to pull it together in some kind of more unified way so that I can draw the conclusions, that would be helpful.
Yeah. So now for that particular use case, I would still just use ChatGPT because it's really effective at transforming data and making it useful. And one of the things that I really like about you know, these new tools, I think about, like, one of the things that a technical issue that I was trying to deal with is we had all this information, but we had to go through and parse it and look for patterns to pull out pricing and like addresses and other information, and then make sure we are eliminating PII. And you can just, so if you, any of you guys, if you've ever been a programmer and you've had to write a bunch of regular expressions, you just, at least I want to light myself on fire. I hate writing them. And we would have to do that sort of really, really, you know, technical, I don't know, it's just annoying work. But now AI can just automatically do that and then put it into a database for you. So essentially we were just putting in like a bunch of email data and said, hey, go through all of these and then put them in this table with these headers. And it did it automatically. So that sort of data transformation and automation is really, really helpful. But I got a feeling James is going to share. James, do you have an example of this or do you have a question?
Example of you mean things like syntactually, like regex?
Well, just data
That's
transformation and stuff like that.
yeah. I was really gonna ask kind of a question
Yeah.
based on the first part of your presentation.
Okay.
But yeah, I think some of the busy work, I think that's where for coding for developers, like remembering syntax and like the things that doesn't help you produce better code or faster if you have all these things memorized. But if AI can take the place of things like unit tests too, or functional tests, like the
Yeah.
busy work that, yeah, it has some of a format that's universal. But what I was going to ask too, from the product operations side, we use the term for the product side, our PDLC, our product development lifecycle. I don't know if that's like a term that's used was used other places, but how does that interact with, like, how can you marry that with the SDLC? Because like I feel like different agile teams have, in agile you're told you should be doing what's best for the team. Like, what does a team want to do? How do they work best? But if they size things differently, if they, there's a lot of different variables I think that happens at the ground floor, and when you're trying to surface them all up and combine them between all the other teams, unless they're all working, they treat a story point the same way across all of them. How do you know if your velocity is equivalent? Or I'm just curious. That was something we struggled with, was kind of figuring out how to make that consistent across the board, even if the product side is.
Yeah. So it's interesting because, again, I think you're going to get a lot of pushback in product operations from groups like engineering if you start being heavy-handed and bureaucratic and saying like, well, this is now how you're going to do it. And I want to give one example of how I would let my teams operate the way they want, to a point, because ultimately for the business to be successful, teams need to be predictable and be able to put together realistic estimations. And I'm going to show this because I want to give a shout out to Mike. Is Mike still on the call? Wait, where did he go? There's so many people here. I don't know if he's still here. Anyway, but he kind of helped me improve this. We were having a discussion in the Pragmatic alumni community. But let me go share my screen real quick.
Mike McGonigal is here, if that's the Mike you mean.
No, it was Mike Hammerslag.
Okay.
Okay, so you can see my screen. So what I did, so James, you were mentioning things like estimating. And so I let teams, because I didn't expect this is what, 1.3.5, 8, 13 needs to be. Really what I wanted them to do is like, all right, what were the problems that you identified, and then we would have a method for doing t-shirt sizing. Now the t-shirt sizing we typically did based on engineering weeks. And the reason we did that is because you might start off a quarter with 8 engineers. You may end that quarter with 5 engineers. And if you did it by sprints, you're like, well, you still had, whatever, like 13 sprints or, like 6 sprints during that quarter, well, we're down 30%, whatever it is. So I like the term using engineering weeks. And that way you can kind of adjust a little bit easier. But what you do is you capture how many, engineers you have working, and it says, all right, for over these 13 weeks in this quarter, and then you need to start subtracting. And again, this is a way that teams were still able to run agile. Some teams were doing, Scrumban, some teams are doing Kanban, some were doing, Scrum. But essentially, we would figure out what is the head count, and then we would multiply that by like how much time was left after you minus things like vacations, all hands, hackathons, sick days, holidays, vacation. Then you need to say, well, we've got certain, fixed costs based in. So, you have technical debt. And different teams have different levels of technical debt. So then you get into prod support and support. So this is an example. And then again, you can ultimately, you can then figure out, all right, how much can we get done in this sprint or in this quarter, and what can't we done by doing these estimates. So this is a way that product operations can bring a consistency and efficiency to teams without doing it with a heavy hand. Yes, Matt.
Yeah, speaking from the engineering, or more specifically product engineering side, where I sort of come in and at the juncture of both, but more on the engineering side, I think the one of the comments is you were talking about story points and predictability and velocity. And like, I think one of the things, if you step back and you think about agile, is the ability to respond to change. That's it, that's the thing that's, sometimes lost on people. Like, yeah, we want to be predictable. We want these darn engineers to do, but that's not really the goal. The goal is to deliver these results or deliver these outcomes. And I think it starts with, it's the art of the possible, as we say in Agile. It's like, you can't just say, it must be this way.
Yeah.
Which is why I like, Dan, your perspective, like, sort of give people, like, you got to start with what's possible in the given context. But I think the great thing is having goals, even with big, I've worked on big teams, well, 160, 200 people, as small as like 10. Like, can you get goals that are really through lines to customer value, and then create it with engineers? And then you have things like story points and the structural elements, and all those things are good. There's nothing wrong with them. I love them. It's like using them for many, many years. But it's not, the purpose is not to follow the process. It's like, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, right? So it's like, if we could figure out, I've always said this with my team, if you violate your predictability, your story points, but you deliver these amazing outcomes by going in and doing the right things, then they come back and say, well, Matt, you got to make sure that we have things that are, like if it's an OKR and there, or any sort of goals, and they're prioritized, and then we know what the outcome is, and we know how we can, use lead metrics to contribute to those. That becomes like, it's very empowering for teams to do that. So I just want to throw that bit about Agile and sort
No, I agree wholeheartedly. It's Agile is not, people think it's like, it's all execution. It's not like, oh, hey, our velocity went up 20% over the quarter. But all right, well, what impact do we have? That's really what we're aiming for. So I could not agree more. Other questions? Or does anyone have like a tool that they wanted to share, or anything that like you think others might benefit from? Oh, so Vishal says, with the pace of AI based products being released, some of which can be extremely useful, how does one keep up? Man, it is like drinking from the fire hose. So the way that I have found, I subscribe to a few different newsletters, and then I use the tools every day. Like as soon as they kind of release something, I kind of get it around and play with it. So use AI every day. And they're good. Like, I don't get into some of the minutia, which the different benchmarking tests and this and that. And I kind of dove into some of these white papers, but I realized that I was like, I'm going too deep. I really need to figure out, all right, ultimately, how can I help people learn, feel comfortable with these tools so that they can see that rise in productivity, and then help others. So you kind of get that kind of all boats rising. Oh, so Matt mentions the TDLR or TLDR. I like the AI enterprise, excuse me, AI exchange newsletter as well. And then the other one, give me 1 second. Oh, the rundown AI newsletter. All of those are helpful. Oh, Carrie mentioned one as well. Oh yeah, Diana's like reads the rundown. What I really liked about the rundown is they have this section, and in here, like, oh, let me just share this real quick. I've gone through. Oops, I need to make this shareable. So I've gone through and in this document, when I see things that are helpful for product managers that they might want to go and try, I'll just be like, great, this is something you can go and do, and it'll take you to links and you can learn about like, oh, I didn't realize they had this trick and this trick and this trick. So this is just a Word document that kind of captures some different like mini tutorials that you can do to get more comfortable with different AI. Yes, David, you had a question. Hang on, we're unmuting you now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, so I think somebody mentioned earlier in the chat, I think Richard Gower did it, that information architecture is important in the era of AI, and I'm not sure how widespread that is. And I think again, like depending on understanding, but my interpretation of information architecture is there's a slew of tools, from the data management perspective, where you have taxonomies, controlled vocabularies, ontologies, and it can be implemented as a knowledge graph. And these are tools that are helpful to essentially inform and give context to a chatbot, right, before you ask it a question. And so I'm interested to see here if anybody's had that experience. Dan, maybe you've worked with, like, how do you teach your Gen AI with taxonomy or ontology or controlled vocabulary?
Yeah. Well, Matt, do you kind of have more like hands-on experience with this? I don't know if you wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that.
Which Matt?
No, Matt Roberts. You were mentioning Azure. Oh, I'm still reading what you're saying here, but yeah.
I guess I think that I mean, Azure and Microsoft are doing a pretty good job. I mean, with their integration of OpenAI and all these kinds of things, they've brought a lot of things that are. I mean, there's the tools that are out there, like you mentioned, Miro and Jira and all these kinds of things that are incorporating it. But I think from a platform perspective, a lot of us live in the Microsoft world. Some of us live in the Azure world to a certain extent, and there's a lot of really interesting things. I find them interesting because they're useful kind of out of the box for people. I'm in AWS. I used to work at AWS. Like I love AWS from like an infrastructure, low level kind of thing. But as a user, it's like if all my data is in Dynamics and I'm on Office 365 and I got Teams and I got SharePoint or OneDrive or whatever we're calling it these days, like that's a really useful source of information. And it's right there at my fingertips. And I've sponsored my entire team and like just turn it on, just use it because and then you every time OpenAI does something, it's available in Azure and sort of some of those capabilities within Microsoft, pretty darn close.
Yeah. And when it comes to like data architecture, I think this again goes back to use case. And because I think there are certain things like maybe from like business internal data that doesn't make sense for AI. Maybe like you still keep it in Power BI and you have your business insights. But sometimes when you're trying to be able to cross-reference customer support and sales and stuff like that, where maybe that essentially it's more about the sentiment in the content than the structure of the data. I think that's where AI, you're going to see some of the short, like the kind of the near terms real potential and benefits.
Yeah, it's interesting people talk about information architecture. I love information architecture. I still use folders and all these things, but it's so there's just so much. And when you start thinking about ETL, data pipelines, or ELT, right? All the different kinds of things like that is data engineering. I think everybody, including engineers, want all of that to go away. And actually, AWS has done a really good job with QuickSight. If you're on what's the data warehouse in AWS that everybody uses for AWS? God, Redshift. Thank you. So if you're on Redshift, it's like all of a sudden, if your data's in Redshift, you don't have to worry about this stuff anymore. And they've connected it with Q, so you can just write queries and just like get stuff out of it. I haven't used it, but I've got buddies that are over there that are building it, and it's the right thing because none of us want to do this data engineering stuff anymore. It's like put the data somewhere and let the technology go figure out how to do it. Let these like the hyperscalers go figure out how to do it. I just want to get actionable insight from all that data.
Yeah, it's funny when you said ETL, I started having flashbacks to my engineering days, but I know we're wrapping up. I just wanted to drop in my LinkedIn. If you have any questions, want to chat about product management, AI, Pragmatic, anything, connect with me. I'll send you my Calendly. We'll find a time to chat. If you're local, we'll grab coffee or something like that. But thanks, everyone. I appreciate you coming, and I'll turn it over to Matt and Vishal, to, I guess, to wrap it up.
Yeah. Vishal, do you want to wrap it up or to come off mute?
All right, I was going to say very thought-provoking session. Thank you so much, Dan. I was just typing it up. No, this is great. Lots of good information. Kind of puts the large, big picture thinking around products and AI and how to kind of organize things. I did kind of, yeah, I mean, this was, thank you so much for taking the time. Thanks to everyone that joined as well. We will regroup again at the end of June. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more participation as well. Today was great. Thanks for everyone on the chat and others that had questions, comments. That's exactly what we want. The whole purpose of this SIG is to participate and engage. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Thanks, Matt.
All right.
Thanks,
Have
everyone.
a great weekend, everyone.